to it again.
Yeah.
What else you gonna do? It's Saturday.
Yeah.
We're heading out. We're planning on going near Taliaferro. And what we're gonna do, we're gonna keep the clips on the area that we haven't filmed much. So we're gonna film the roads less traveled today on the north side of town. Mostly Taliaferro, all those back roads to share with you all. So, should be interesting.
On this ride, Paul and I left Northampton, rolled into the woodlands. We decided to just head out. The scheduling of the group rides were just too much later in the morning to wait for them. We took off on Honea Egypt Road, went by the Grand Lake Estates, just maintaining endurance pace. This time of year is good to back off the intensity and go ahead and kind of recuperate. You know, you continue to do some nice aerobic rides, but it's really nothing major that you're training for this time, unless there is. You want to kind of let your body heal, your mind and everything to get fresh before you start really building your base in November. When we got back into Montgomery, we picked up Mark Kate. He rode with us into Keenan. We went out and took Fishcreek. All of that is on the film, and you will really like how we just kept the effort steady and consistent. It was very breezy and windy, and we went ahead and worked together and just kept the three of us moving. I think you will like the clips that we got for you.
Yeah.
We're on the open road. We're on Keenan-Cutoff Road in northwest Harris County. We're on the county line between Harris and Montgomery. We're headed west towards Highway 149. We decided to change the route. Our plan was to go to Taliaferro, as you heard in the prologue. But then once we got out, we just wanted to take the long way around. You know, wanted to do something with a lot more lumps. We did not want to do Fishcreek today, so that's why we're out here. And it was kind of cool that we did, because we hadn't been on Keenan-Cutoff for a while. I got a new head unit on. You can see we got temperature, we got heart rate. Those of you who have been keeping up, my power meter had a mechanical failure to the body of the pedal, and so it's being replaced by Garmin under warranty. So it's not here, it's not in service. So I'm using my new head unit with my heart rate. I went ahead and got the Garmin 1040 unit. Very, very nice. Lots of great features. Just easy to set up. I love what they've done. You can just connect it to your Garmin account, your Garmin Connect account, and it downloads all your stats from your old unit. And the setup is within less than a minute. You're ready to go. And it's got a lot of features I will delve into in the future, but right now it's like a Timex. It just works. So as I said in the prologue, was that this time of year you're recuperating. If you've got a lot of family and friends, it's the time to hang out with them, sneak in a ride every other day, that kind of stuff. Unless you're preparing for something this late in the season, it's time to back off and let your body rest mentally and physically. So we're not really pushing the envelope here. We're just riding and enjoying being on the bicycle. When we started, it was very, it was still dark when we started, but I think I still have my sunglasses on the back of my head, which is where I leave it until I put it on. It ended up just being very breezy. I did not realize that we were riding at around, say, 20 miles an hour. We're just kind of rolling along when we decided to go ahead and start filming. This time of year, the weather is nice. They call it the shoulder seasons. It's nice to be able to get out the Aero jersey and other slightly non-summer jerseys. If I wore this jersey you see me wearing in our summer, I would overheat. It's not as breathable as the flyweights and so forth, and that's what we need in the humidity. So this time of year, well into May, you can pretty much wear anything, because our winters even start in the 40s, but during the ride it'll ramp up. So we get to use most of our kit This is my favorite time of year. Summer is just too much to deal with. So it's clear. I turn. And this is also the time of year to service the bike you've been using the most. Even if you haven't been using the other ones, you might want to get your annual service on those that's just been sitting, because the lubricants really can sometimes they can liquefy, and sometimes they can harden depending on the kind of lube you have. So annually, you want to get your headset, your bottom bracket bearings, your wheel bearings kind of adjusted and looked at to see if it needs an overhaul or not. This is the time to get your bike ready so that when November comes, you can start building your base. It's a good time to put the bike in for service, because if you neglect that, when it's time for you to start ramping up the miles, you will have problems. So needless to say, this blue bike today is Monday, what we call maintenance Monday. The blue bike will be serviced today because it needs a bottom bracket service. I'm also going to change the bearings. The Campagnolo Super Record has external bearings, and they require a lot more service than the ones that are sealed cartridges per se. You got to make sure they're clean. And once they get a little noisy, mine's making a little bit of noise when I'm out of the saddle, and noise means it needs service, and I don't want to just service it and lube it, because I've got a slight play in my bottom bracket. That means it's time to put new bearings on there. They're fairly inexpensive. I don't buy those ceramic bearings and all that stuff. I just get the standard bearings, and they're under $30 US. You will need to have the skills if you're working with something like that to have a bearing puller and so forth and so on. Know what you're doing. But yeah, it's maintenance time. This is time to go get a physical with your doctor, or if you have anything that's been ailing you, it's time to make sure that you get that sorted out this time of year, so you can be ready to ramp up the miles. God willing, we'll be doing the Rafa Festive 500 again this year. It always encourages you to get out more, so we'll try to do that. And usually Paul and I pile on the miles because he's usually on break from work. We're waiting for the cars because they were passing so aggressively. We stayed on the shoulder there, and this is Springbranch Road. We're headed west. This is one of my other favorite roads in the area. I like coming out here. Depending on how you get here, you don't have to deal with too many busy roads. That stretch we're on might have been maybe 2 miles, about 3.5 kilometers, let's say. And that's it. And then you're on this, look at this gym. And it's like this all the time. Sparsely populated. Paul comes to take the lead. We have similar colors. We didn't plan ahead to wear the same jerseys. They're not the same jersey. Paul's wearing the Souke jersey, the lightweight, kind of that flyweight version. I'm wearing my Aero mustard color Rafa jersey. But they're in the same color spectrum, so whenever we ride, we try to look like a team. And so whenever possible, especially when it's just the two of us, but we're so busy this week, we didn't get a chance to really coordinate the outfit. But we mostly do that around the first week of every month. So the first weekend of every month, we make sure that we get together and put our similar kits together, down to the shoes, the socks, where possible. Paul loves his Cervelo because he finds it the most comfortable. No matter how many bicycles you have, you will always have a favorite, either by the ride, the way it fits, the way it feels, the way it rolls. You always have that. Doesn't mean the other ones are bad, but the other ones you take for specific kinds of rides. My orange bike, describe it as the Pit Bull. It's a very aggressive feeling frame. Very frisky. It's almost like having a Ferrari. It's just it just wants to go all the time, you know. Whereas the blue bike I ride is a Boulevard cruiser that can play when necessary. So for an all-arounder, it's good. And then my Colnago is a cross between both of them, you know, depending on your mood, you know. But if you have a lot of bikes in the Steed, you want to make sure that, first of all, the storage is important. If you store them indoors, yeah, it's cooler, I'm telling Paul. The temperature is significantly cooler. It says 20 C right now, so it's about 1 degree Celsius, which is about 3 degrees Fahrenheit, something like that. So you can feel it. So what I was saying was that you want to make sure that your bikes are stored properly. If you can store them indoors, fine. Preferably in a garage or even inside a room, which is where I store mine. But when they're stored properly, it's easier for you to keep up with the maintenance because they don't liquefy. The grease will not liquefy if it's not exposed to extreme temperatures, either too high or too cold, you know, too low. But you want to keep up with that. Don't just have a bike sitting for 6-7 months, a year, and then you just jump on it and go put big miles. I'm harassing those cows. That's what you boys working on this morning. So if your bike's been stored for a while, more than a year, 9 months to a year, then definitely get it tuned up. Get the grease changed so you don't have to replace bearings and that kind of stuff. Even if you have sealed cartridge bearings, it helps to have the lube between the cartridge itself and what it spins in, because they do touch the interface of your bottom bracket depending on how it's designed. So maintenance October, get your bike ready so that when November hits, you're ready to roll. So I've already serviced all my frames. This is the only one, the blue one, that needs the most service because I use it the most. I just love how solid it has been. No nicks, no cracks, no nothing. It just works. And the feel of the bike has remained the same. I play with different wheels and different things, and they behave differently based on the wheel. But the bike itself, it's just solid. They're designed to last. You see my cadence is up. That's another thing you got to work on, because this will help you ensure that your fit is right. If you're not fitted to your bicycle correctly, you don't want to spin. I'm staying right on the cusp of zone 2. Later on in the ride, you know, the effort will go up. Like I've said before, just because zone 2 is the goal doesn't mean you will stay there the whole time, but you don't want to spend too much time in the higher zones. Basically what I'm building here are the oxidative capabilities of my slow twitch fibers, so they can efficiently process lactate when I go harder. This effectively helps you raise your threshold. So you don't want to just be training at the threshold. So as we hit the climb, I continue to downshift because I want to keep my rhythm the same. So the goal here is to ride the climb, not kill it. You hear Paul shifting. Don't worry about the speed. Focus on your effort. Look at my cadence. I'm not looking at cadence when I'm riding. I'm just downshifting to get in a gear that will keep me in that range. And as you see, right here, I'm spinning more. This is the steepest pitch. It says 7%. I think it's about 9. So now we've crested the heaviest pitch. I'm going to start shifting up now to harder gears. You hear Paul shifted right there. You want to finish the climb by pushing over the top. That's what we're doing. You can only do that if you're conservative when you begin the climb. Because if you blow your legs and they tighten up, you'll start going slower and slower when you hit the apex. This encourages you to ride more climbs. And this will prepare you for when you need to go harder, because you will know how and you will know when on a climb. see how my cadence stayed in the same range, the 90s? That's the idea. This allows your legs to buffer whatever lactate was created. By keeping your cadence high enough, they can process it better. And you can keep going. You don't have to slow down. In a few kilometers, Paul's gonna come through to take his cuts. So we're riding like this on or off camera. We get into a certain rhythm. If we're feeling good, we stay up there longer. When we're done, we roll off. The other person comes and takes over. We don't necessarily set, oh, you need to do 2 minutes or 30 seconds or whatever. We'll only do those when we're doing the rotating pace lines, and we're going faster. But this time of year is steadier, so we pull longer. So because we rode the climb conservatively, it did not affect our ability to continue once we were done with it. The road's going up, you can see it. It's at least 1.5, 2% right here. You know, the grade will pop up after you've gone through. Nice level off a bit. What I found is that you get on the climb and then you look at that grade thing on there. If you glance at it, because I got a field on there, I have grade, cadence, critical, 3 or 4 things that I look at. And I'll glance at the grade from time to time, but it's after you've gone through the grade that GPS will tell you, oh, it's 3%. And so you'll hit 3%, not realize, but after a while you get to know. We're going downhill here, slightly downhill. And you want to go through the gears. Don't stop pedaling. Don't start coasting, all that stuff. Keep the legs turning. It will process that lactate, and you get used to continuing the effort. So you find the gear you need to keep the cadence in the same range. And ride the downhills. One day we're on a ride and Mo was like, don't pedal, don't stop pedaling. We're on Honea, Egypt. On the downhill section, he was saying, don't stop pedaling. On the downhill, keep riding. Especially when you got people following you. Because if you stop pedaling, they're already in your draft. So it's even easier and they come up on you because they're getting sucked into you. So you need to keep pedaling and then let them soft pedal or something. You know, those of you riding a group, you know what I mean. You're at the front, you're going downhill. Yeah, it's easier. You don't need to kill yourself, but you need to put your gearing in the appropriate ratio so you can slightly feel the gear. You're teaching your body to ride. 2 other cyclists going the other way. So we plan on spending most of the winter on these roads. Once you find the areas where you live that are amenable or friendly to cycling, then when you're going on a particular ride for a certain kind of workout, you get to know, oh, I'm gonna go to Springbranch, or I'm gonna go to this area because I want to do this kind of workout. You know, or like there sometimes during the week I go to Glenlock, that's an area near the house. It's another neighborhood. They have nice little short ramps that you can just go for a quick ride. So it's good to identify which routes will suit your workout, and you put those in the database so you know what direction to head out in. You don't need to be going to exotic locations on every ride. It's not logical nor practical. So when you identify these routes, visit them frequently because they suit the kind of workouts you want to do. So on Saturday, we head out in this direction, or sometimes we go west, as you've seen, but we pick a route that will work for our longer rides. Longer and more peaceful terrain. Because during the week, we do trainer workouts or, you know, just little neighborhood jaunts where you're stopping more frequently. You can use those to work on, like, let's say, quick accelerations or whatever it is, depending on the time of the year. So Paul comes to take the lead, and he's moving through. I'm just going to sit in. Usually I get a drink or something, and I take advantage of the break I shift up my gearing and slow my cadence. So it's like a rest so that when he's done, I can be fresh. This is what I was talking about. If you look at my cadence, it's fluttering because he's pulling and it was slightly downhill. He continued to ride the gear he's in, but I got to like feather mine. Now he's going up here. And you can hear how quiet it is. I'm finding that draft. I'm on his left. That's where the wind is coming. We didn't have a tailwind much on this ride. Just a short stretch. Right now the wind is a factor. It's not pushing us. It's in our face. That's why I'm sitting on his hip, because that's where the draft is. We got a morning northerly flow. I think it's like northeasterly right now in this spot. So I'm sitting on his left quadrant. I let him go a little bit here, so it's not too easy. You can see my heart rate dropped about maybe 7 to 10 beats since I pulled off. I want to keep my effort in the same range. So even when I'm behind, I want to be working. He does the same thing. When we're riding together, he doesn't really get into the draft that super tight unless we're really hammering. So now I'll go ahead and pull through as the hill approached. So if you watch my legs as I come through, they look like levers. I have the leverage I need because my saddle is far back enough to where I can deliver power to the pedals based on the length of my femur. When your bike does not fit you properly, you feel like you're tipping or sitting on the nose of the saddle or whatever, and what you end up doing is you push back to where you're not in the saddle, you're sitting on the back lip of the saddle to try to give yourself leverage. Well, if that saddle is not set up correctly, every time you go hard, you're moving all over your saddle trying to get efficient. That's what the body does. It will move you to where it needs to be when you start loading, increasing the effort. It does that. So when you see riders moving all over the place, they're not happy where they're sitting. Even the professionals, some of them, like I was watching the World Championships, they're doing a time trial, and you could tell that some of them did not like where they were sitting on that saddle. They kept scooting back. That means that particular rider had spent more time on the road bike and not enough work on that TT bike getting it dialed in. Because the specialists in at that level, they have a rock solid position, and you have to work at that on your TT bike because your hips are rolled forward more. I've always preferred my road position to anything on a TT bike, and whenever I would set up a TT bike, I wanted it to be very close to that road position because I'm very flexible. I can drop load. So I didn't really mess with my saddle that much. But the TT bikes have more of an aggressive setup because you're more forward. And you're sitting in the position on whatever saddle you decide to use. You should be sitting where you are in the saddle, but you're more like on the rivet, as they say back in the day, on the rivet, if you know what I mean. Your hips are rolled forward. So most of those riders will only use their TT bikes for those events and then hang them up. Get on their road machines. You will see us pass a guy later in the clips. And he's in a TT position, but he's not really going very fast. And I'm like, what's the point of that? If you're gonna ride slowly, man. I mean, you can do it on the bike. I'm just saying, but he was out there, the wind was pounding. He just didn't look like he was having fun. You don't always have to be hammering on your TT bike, but if you're gonna get into that position, you might as well be rolling. And his cadence was low. He just looked like he was laboring. You'll see it. I keep my cadence high, especially when I train solo, because it's easy to let things go. I mean, I like to focus on making sure I'm keeping those legs turning. So I much rather err on the side of a smaller gear ratio than to try to muscle stuff, especially when I'm riding solo. Unless I'm doing a particular effort. Right here, the road goes up. I don't want to downshift. We're in the same gear, and I just push a little more. But we're right at the top level of zone 2. We're approaching the end of Springbranch Road, where it hits Old Pleasantville Road, I believe that's called. We're in the Tri-Lakes area.
Let's go left. I got an idea. Let's see that bridge.
So I suggested to Paul that we go left because they were supposed to have been working on that crappy bridge that's out here, but they ended up not changing it.
East, kind of northeast, towards the FM 1097, aka Bethel. We are on a piece of Bethel right now, going by the Gorilla route. I want to get some clips for you all.
Well, Bethel Road,
that's what I'm talking about.
headed northeasterly. We had gone through Tri-Lakes. I was trying to see if the bridge had been replaced. No, the wooden bridge is still there. Not the end of the world. It rattles you a little bit. I don't like going over it. We're on Bethel Road, where it's going to take us to the forest. We don't go through the forest. We go ahead and head south because at this point of the ride, see where it says 220 something? Let's see. Yeah, duration. The duration is more like 320 something because we didn't start the camera till we were out on like Keenan-Cutoff. You know, when we did the intro later in the ride also, I believe. We did the intro 1 hour into the ride. As soon as we had crossed 1488 near the woodlands, that's where we did the intro. So there's an hour's duration not depicted on here. So we're almost 3.5 hours into the ride. And I suggested to Paul it's time to head southeasterly. So we're headed east and we're gonna go south in about probably 5 kilometers or so, about 3 miles. This is the section of Bethel that is nicely paved as we go past the gorilla statues on the right. You can't see them, so we don't even film them. They're too far in on that property. But we call it the gorilla route because they're there. The road kicks up here. That's what I told him. I said, this bad boy's no fly. So I look for the appropriate ratio to keep my legs turning. You need to do this, not just when you're by yourself, especially with the group. Find your ratio. If people shoot by you and you feel like you can lift the gear you're in, fine. If not, you stay with your tempo because you're better off finishing the climb than to die on the climb because you're trying to chase some mountain goat. Because you can claw them back. If you have decent fitness, you can claw them back at TT pace in an aggressive group. But people think they got to train, to kill themselves during training. Never kill yourself in training. Don't force yourself. It will come. Look at that. That's beautiful. Nice shot there, Paul. So we went over the first little lump there. It's going to level off a little bit, and then it has a false flat as we approach the FM 1097, also known as Bethel Road. We're going to be going south towards Montgomery. So once you discover these kind of rides by going with groups in your area or just exploring on your own or talking to people at the local bike shop, you find these areas, and depending on what your plan calls for, then you pick an area to go to that day and check it out. So even though we come here frequently, we never do the same thing. And because we have a different goal and a different focus each time, it's never boring. Because just being on the bike is exciting enough. So I don't really care where I ride. I just want to ride my bike. That's all the more reason why sometimes if you're not in the mood to deal with the drama in groups or whatever group you're with, just head out on your own.
Yeah. Yeah, man.
Sometimes the groups have too much drama. Because anywhere there's people, there will be drama. This is where we turn on 1097. And we turn into that wind. The wind has now shifted because it's later in the morning. It's about 10 o'clock. Let's see. and the wind is now coming from the southwest. The wind changed on us. So now it's coming from in our face and to the right. It's not behind us. It was in our face when we were headed out earlier. Now it's flipped. We get that a lot around here. It starts out cold because the northerly wind is pumping in. Then later in the morning, the south wind takes over. And that's the nice thing about our area. That's why we wear breathable. I was telling him about the road in the distance. It curves and it kicks up. You can see it in the distance. The camera does not do it justice. It's nothing like the real eye vision. But what I was saying was that because of the changeable weather we have northerly flows in the morning in our shoulder seasons, even in the winter. And then in the afternoon, boom, it warms up because the south from the Gulf, the south wind takes over and pumps that warmer air in. So we have to wear breathable fabrics that can handle the cold in the morning and still be comfortable as it gets above 20 Celsius later in the morning. Get that a lot in the winter. We'll start at 5C to like 28C in the same ride. And depending on where you live, you probably may encounter similar things. This is where this road kicks up. And this time of year, we're not trying to kill the hill. We're just riding it. So I put it in a slightly larger gear as I sit behind Paul and keep my legs working. So find a mate that you have that you guys share similar goals and ambitions and whatever, and you guys head out. You don't need a large group all the time. This time of year, our schedules are very erratic. So if the group is not cooperating, you just head out by yourself. The guys kept changing the start time to 7:30 and this and that. You know, I don't have time to be waiting. I got to get back. I have other things to do. We want to get 6 hours in. So if we leave later, that means that's later in the afternoon. We're coming back 2, 3 in the afternoon. We don't have time for that. We want to get back around noon to 1 p.m. our time. That's our window. We have other appointments at 1 p.m. and later. So if the group's not leaving early, we just go ahead and go. There should be a time change for the one last time final. Well, not one last time. We're gonna fall back, and then next spring we're gonna spring forward, and that will stay as the permanent time in the United States. We got the politicians to agree on at least one thing. That. I don't know why they call them politicians. They should call them shysters. They all go to Washington and get filthy rich. It used to be a part-time job. Now they're full-time collecting money instead of doing the people's work. And I don't give a crap what party's in power. I'm talking about all of them. They need to do the people's work. I've lived under other systems. You don't want that. You don't want no king or whatever you call it dictating. You want something that the people have a say in, so the people's rights are not abused. People need to realize we're all Americans. It doesn't matter what party affiliation you believe in or whatever. We're all Americans. Somebody attacks us, we'll gather together. Just like all families have their squabbles, but when somebody comes from the outside, you all stand together. It's the same thing. We can disagree. Doesn't mean we're enemies. I just need to listen to your point of view. You need to listen to my point of view. And we agree to disagree and go have lunch or whatever it is we do. But there's too much animus there right now. So we got to get past that and keep this great country going. The United States of America. The US of A. Gotta love it.
I love this road.
There we go. That's what I'm talking about. Beautiful country.
Respect the road.
Oh, yeah.
Respect the road. That's what I'm telling my brother. Listen to the wind. And it was in our face when we were going. This thing is blowing. And look, we're doing 22K. I mean, I'm not paying attention to the speed so much. I'm focusing on the effort. Because the wind is so stiff, And look at the flags on the right. I didn't tag them, but I hope you saw it. Because the wind is so stiff, I make sure I make it like a mountain climb, 80s, so I get a rhythm. It's like a mountain time trial. Listen to that thing. So whenever you encounter it, this time of year, you're gonna encounter it depending on if you live on this side of the world or wherever you live. Don't let that detail. Look at that dog. I didn't even see him. I don't know where he came from. Paul called out to watch the dog. He was running back home. I guess he lives on that side. He was out there sniffing something. And that's what I talked about. That dog's in harm's way. You saw that car.
Sniffing on something on the road.
I was asking Paul what he was doing over there. He was sniffing on some dead animal or something. But the thing is that these people need to secure their pets. You saw that right after he went across the road. That car passed. A dog low to the road like that, drivers don't see them. It's the same thing that happens what we call the armadillo Texas speed bump. Our armadillos are nocturnal creatures. They come out at night and they look like, their color is like concrete. So they match, like if they're on a concrete road, you think it's just the road because they're so low to the ground. So you see them dead all the time because people just don't see them. So people refer to them jokingly as the Texas speed bump. You know, you go over them before you realize they're there. But listen to that wind. So when you're in the wind, I got sidetracked there when the dog went across. The wind is tougher mentally than a hill because the hill has an end. The wind doesn't necessarily have an end if you're going to be continuing in that same direction. So it can cause a lot of mental anguish if you don't approach it properly. You must focus on the fact that, okay, this is the effort. You see, I'm still in zone 2. The effort I want to do, and that's all you focus on. Don't be shy to downshift if you need to, if the load is too much. And I think that's where a lot of people mess up because they want to just stay in this big gear, pound this wind. You're fighting an 800-pound gorilla. That wind is not going anywhere. So you need to decide how hard you want to work. If your goal is to go very hard, the wind is actually a good training tool because you will keep the effort up without mentally trying to push too much, like if you have a tailwind. There are a lot of training programs that will call for you to either go uphill or into the wind to really push hard. It's load. You can use the wind as a tool to get stronger. The road is slightly downhill here, so the speeds are going up, and now it's going more easterly. If you look at the little metric there, but I could tell visually it went to the left. So we're going more easterly, so the wind is lessened. But in the distance, it's going to curve to the right, which will take us back towards the southeasterly direction. You see, if you look at the metric up there, it's tilting between east and southeast right here. It's kind of nice to see that. I've gotten very accustomed to doing these narrations and looking at the graphics at the same time, so you get a better appreciation. So when I'm out there, I can relate what I see here when I'm narrating. While I'm out on the road, I can tell which direction. And now with GPS, you can list your heading if you want on your head unit. It's kind of nice. The road goes up, you can see it. The idea is stay in the same zone. Just know that the wind or the hill, they're not your enemy. You know, I know we all have this phrase, man, the wind be always at your back. Actually, when I'm riding very hard, I do my hardest efforts on the hills or into the wind because downwind, you have to work exponentially harder to gain a little bit more speed. You gain more climbing a hill faster than on the flat road trying to maximize, you know. So if you're in a rolling terrain during a timed event, it's better to push harder in the windy sections or the uphill sections and then save your legs a little bit on those downhill sections because you have to work so much harder for that extra little bit of speed. Because of the wind, my heart rate has now crept right above sweet spot. but I'm trying to stay as smooth as possible to make sure we don't exceed where we need to be. It's going down a little bit. I'm not looking at it when I'm riding, but I can kind of tell because your breathing starts to go up a little bit. I see a rider in the distance here. We're not chasing him. He's just really going slow. And this wind is just pounding. It was amazing how much wind was out there. But we get this a lot when the temperature changes. You can see it's 26°C now because of this wind. It's pumping from the Gulf. And look at the clouds. Those are our warm clouds. You get that in the summer a lot. Sky is beautiful. This is all the stuff we take in when we're there. So we know, okay, the wind's going to be here. Fine. Make sure you eat, drink, whatever. In fact, after we get off camera, we had to stop at an HEB because my body just started overheating. I went through multiple bottles of water. This is the guy we passed, and he just didn't look happy. I waved as I went by. I just put my hand out, I just flicked my palm to go by and give him plenty of room. I went by quickly and gave him a lot of room. I did not want him to think that we were chasing him or whatever. We're just doing our own thing. I didn't want him to get discouraged, but he really did not look very comfortable. He probably needed to downshift a little bit because if you're in the wrong gear, the wind and this terrain, this is lumpy country here. This road is not flat. This is when you need your tight kit. You see that jersey is not moving at all. You want that stuff to fit your body, so you don't pick up any extra drag. We got enough work working with the wind than to have my jersey creating more drag like a flag out there. I have dubbed the wind. It was louder than this. We could not hold a conversation. We put our heads down, we're working. Now the road's gonna curve more easterly, I believe. If you look at the metric, you will see the S from south going to the right above that Cyclist avatar there. And now it's going more southeasterly. We're still going south, but more easterly. And the wind lessens a little bit. Of course, the speeds pick up. My effort has not really changed. I'm still around sweet spot. So even though the focus is endurance, based on what's going on out there, if you feel good, that's fine. You can edge up a little bit, but don't go out there and kill your legs. This is kind of a usual effort that I do during the week, so I didn't feel like I was doing anything extreme. And you can see my heart rate now has dropped right to the top of zone 2. And I'm just feeling really good here. I know you can tell by my body language. I'm just kind of rolling. It's like the pedaling has become automatic. I'm not thinking about it. My legs are just moving. I go to the right to give Paul more room because we're headed more easterly here. It says east. The wind's coming from our right now. That south wind that was pounding us is now a crosswind. And you can see Paul is on my hip right here. So in about a kilometer or so, he's going to come by. And that's the way we ride. You're feeling good, you're sitting on the back, you want to help, come to the front. We don't necessarily do a lot of flicking elbows unless we're really going hard. On the steady rides, you just kind of do it by feel. So when he feels like he wants to come to the front, I take the rest. I think he will do it on a hill. I don't know if it's this one or the next one. I downshift. My cadence will go up, but I want to keep my legs turning. You don't lose that much speed if you increase your cadence and downshift, but it saves your legs and how they process the lactate. And you can see I have not moved on that saddle the whole time. That's what a good bike fit gives you. No chafing. You're gonna chafe if you're moving all over the place, rubbing around, friction, saddle's too high, or you're sitting on the wrong spot on the saddle. All that movement. And every time you're moving, you can't pedal. You lose out. It takes energy to move, and you gotta stop pedaling. I think it's on the next hill that Paul will come through. So whenever he comes through, I welcome it, and then I just sit in and wait. And I can tell by his body language when, because you can tell when you ride with people, you just know, okay, let's give him a little break here or whatever. Listen to that thing. Now it's once again going more southerly versus easterly. So we got an in between going east and going southeast right here. We're headed towards Montgomery, Texas. The FM 1097, the open road. Paul said he was going to invite that guy as we passed him, but he saw from his body language that he wasn't going to be able to lift the pace. Because usually when we pass riders, we say, feel free to join the train. And sometimes you don't even have to say anything. Someone that would say, can I just join the train? But he couldn't even sit on us because his pace was so much lower than ours. And his rhythm was just at a different level. So it's like, because normally it helps you to ride with other riders when it's windy like this. I'll take a wheel any day of the week in a windy situation versus riding solo, unless you just want to be by yourself that day. And that's why Mark Kate joined us. Is a lot more fun fighting the elements, fighting a windy day, having a wheel to sit in on than you just pounding away. You see how quiet it is where I'm sitting? I'm on his hip because that's where the draft is right at this moment. When you're in terrain like this, look in the distance, the road's going to curve to the right. We're going to be going more southerly we'll be going more southeasterly versus just east right now. You always got to be looking for that draft because it's going to change. Yeah, I decided to try this shot. I thought it looked good. I got the camera down over the road. And I spin it around. Right at the top of zone 2. And that's why I was saying that when the road's going down, you need to be pedaling because I'm not pedaling and I'm getting sucked along. So that's why I'm hanging back. I'm going to move to the side to catch more wind. So the riders behind you, because they're in your shelter, are going to handle the descents easier. So when you're in front pushing that wind on the downhill, it will feel easier for you, but you must go through the gears and find a ratio that will enable you to keep pedaling in the same range or the same rhythm. That way you can be pedaling and people don't have to start braking back there as much. That's what Paul's doing. He's going through the gears and riding the downhill. And so because he's breaking the wind and pushing the wind, my heart rate is 140 something. Well, when I was pulling, it was like 162 to 152 to 162, something like that. And we're going up that hill. So when you go up the hill, everybody's working. So we'll work on our pedaling. We'll work on of course, it started with a good position on the bicycle. And then we just work on being efficient and smooth. You can see Paul, the only thing moving are his legs. Listen to the wind. It's been dubbed. I don't know how many decibels I took off, but I've dubbed it. And it's still, you can hear it. It's just blowing. The wind is your friend. It makes you strong. It slows you down. You can't go as fast, but you can get some good work in. So you have to plan accordingly. You're going to be going into the wind. I guess they call it windward. You want to make sure you allocate enough time to deal with it, so you're not pressed for time and try to kill yourself. That's why at the 3-hour mark we turn. Start heading back to town. We knew this wind was out here. So when Paul and I ride, that's the position I spend the most time in right there, either on the tops or on the hoods. I don't lower my torso that much. When I'm with the group and we're going hard, the positions are similar, but when we're really going hard, I lower my torso. I close that hole in the front to reduce the drag. I don't know, that hill fell like more than 3%. I think it's about 5% at the crest. It's short. This gets us into Montgomery, Texas. We're going to be making a left turn. It gets a little busy. I got my eyes on the car. See me, I'm looking at my mirror and I see them, they're coming, so I stay on the shoulder there, albeit how small it is. And once the last guy passes, this guy here, we'll wait for him. And we're trying to get behind him and he's slowing down. Now let the other guy know we're going to be turning. So he waits. It's an SUV. But then cars are coming, so I let Paul know cars, there are two of them. There you go. That's how you do it. We're not late for anything. This is the event. We're where we want to be. Do not take chances on your bicycle. You didn't get on the bike because you were late.
We picked up Mark. Came across Mark, so he's sitting in. Gonna go to the front.
We're on the FM 2854. Headed south. We're headed southeasterly towards the Woodlands, Texas. We're gonna go through Honea first. I go ahead and come in front to take the load off Paul. He's been pulling for quite a while. The wind is coming from the right. That's why I passed on the right. This is Mark Kate. We met him outside of the area near Taco Corner. We did not stop at Taco. We just rode past it, and we saw him on the way. So, as I explained earlier, it made more sense for Mark to sit in with us. So I told Paul that we'd be better off just using this highway, even though a lot of times we'll take Mill Route. We're already past the Mill Route turnoff. Normally we take the Mill Route turnoff, Raven Chapel, and then get near Leah Drive. But this time around we just stay here because the wind blowing from the west, in a few kilometers we'll be able to head easterly, and that wind will push us along. I'll go ahead and just set the tempo. The wind is pounding, so I'm right at sweet spot. It says I'm at sweet spot heart rate wise, but it feels like endurance pace to me. Because when I'm riding, it's more my feel than anything. As I'm looking at the stats now, it's a little above zone 3, but it felt like zone 2 to me. So I'm just tapping out the rhythm. We're doing about 24 miles an hour. And it's not wind aided. Not at this point anyway. I stay a little to the right so they can benefit from that's kind of an echelon. You see Mark is a little off to my left. And keep it smooth and steady. Now my heart rate is going back to where I feel it should be. Right at zone 2. Going that hard. And when you're on the bike, as long as we are, you want to make sure you're drinking consistently. Don't fall behind. Drinking, eating, you know. You never want to be hungry on the bike. So at the end of this, after we turn off the camera, we're about maybe 30 minutes from home. My body just started overheating. I had drunk all the water that I had, And so we had stopped at a park, got some water like we usually do when we got into the woodlands, and I finished those 2 bottles. And it had warmed up significantly. You can see it's 31 Celsius right now. That's about 80 degrees Fahrenheit, thereabouts. So by the time we got into town, it was around 36 Celsius, which is about 95. That's what the head unit said anyway. And you can't always go by that because the head unit is in the sun. There's a lot of crap over there I pointed out. That's what Mark's motioning. There's a lot of cracks in the road, holes there. So we know it's there. But I just started feeling hot, so I told Paul, let's stop at the HEB. They used to have like an ice machine and so forth, and we had not been there. There's an HEB in the area called Creekside Forest. And we got there, and they had renovated that place. I mean, it did not look like anything we remember. I mean, I hadn't been there in a while. I don't shop there. You know, it's not my closest store. But it's like they had changed everything. Everything was gone. So I ended up in my cycling outfit, going into the full grocery store and just shopping for something. Paul waited with the bikes. And so I found like some iced tea we like, the Arizona iced tea. Paul really likes that one, so I got that for him. And I just got myself some iced tea and water because he had enough water. He did not need to drink as much as I was drinking. So everybody's different. You got to pay attention to yourself. And so we got out, and when I got back out and we drank the stuff, I felt so much better, you know. And then I ended up with 2 bottles, getting home with 2 full bottles. I'm much rather get home with full bottles than to limp home barely surviving. You don't want to do that because then it hurts your recovery for the next day, the next ride, or just the rest of that day. So once I'm out of water, if we're not close to the end, stop and get water. I much rather have it sitting there and not need that. Because the body changes. Same thing during the ride when you're with the group. 1 minute you can feel great, and that's when you start feeling crappy. You gotta, change what you've been doing. Always listen to your body. Not just on the bike, just in life in general. No one can tell you how you feel but you. Paul's coming for a pole. He's gonna give me the camera. Mark's going through. Mark's had a change of schedule. He's traveling a lot, so he's gone during the week. He's doing something, I don't know what kind of work he's in, but he's doing the same kind of road warrior thing I did many years ago. The money was good, but I hated the work. I hated the schedule. The work itself was fine. I enjoyed it. I still do that. There's a skill you don't lose, IT stuff. But and I'm using those skills now as I run this channel. But what I was saying is, you're always gone from home. Sunday night you're on an airplane, and for some reason there's always delays. You're only flying twice a week, and there's always delays. I'm like, come on, guys, what kind of industry is this? I'm not flying every day. Why are delays always happening on the 2 days I travel? You're sitting in an airport wasting hours when you could be on your bike or with your family or doing whatever. I hated it. So needless to say, I let the money go. I'm done with that. So he's gone all the time. He told us, I'm in these hotels, and they just got the fitness center. I used to do that fitness center. I used to do mostly weights and then swim in the pool. But it's not the same as just getting out on your bicycle and clearing your head. Now, the camera does not pick it up, I guess, because of the wind, but Mark's bike is a cacophony of noise. Everything's ticking and popping, and I just chuckled. I couldn't ride a bike like that. It would drive me nuts. So I don't know what's going on with this bike, but it is a symphony. This is making all kinds of noises. My bike has one little tick, and it's intermittent at this point anyway, this weekend anyway. And it only happens when I stand, and I had narrowed it down to the headset, which was a factor. Well, I overhauled the headset, said it is fine. and now I believe it's the bearing I was talking about earlier. It's time for service. I use this bike a lot, and I always service it before putting a lot of kilometers on it. And so it's time for its winter service per se. But it ticks from time to time, but I know it's there. I know it means it needs to be quiet. So I'm gonna roll to the front here, give Paul the camera. Mark's telling Paul that he's coming on the right, which is the proper side because the wind is coming from that side. So by pausing Paul on the right, we give Paul shelter. I came on the left because we're going so fast. I didn't want to get on that narrow shoulder. It's a lot of sand and gravel. That's what Mark's motioning for. And that's all you need to do. Imagine trying to talk in this wind. This thing has been dubbed and you can still hear it. You can't talk. Nobody will understand you. Just point, motion. Sign language, so to speak. It's too much wind. I mean, it's just pounding us. I don't worry about it. I just put my head down and ride. Right now, the terrain is like mine. It's almost flat. It's just slightly flat, but we're moving. We got a bit of a tailwind because you can see here, we're going kind of southeasterly, but the wind's blowing a little bit from the right. And as this road turns, as you see it turning to the left, that wind is pushing us a bit. So our speeds are going to pick up after we get through that turn where the road curves to go directly east. See right here, look at the graphics above the cyclist avatar. You see how the east is coming back to the middle now? We're headed more easterly than southeasterly. This is the one section where we got some help from the wind. See that? We're going perfectly east. So that means we've got the wind behind us and that south wind is being blocked by the trees on the right. You gotta know this stuff if you ride a lot. It makes a difference, especially in the winter, so you can know how to dress. So now we got a bit of a tailwind. You can see we're approaching almost 40 kilometers an hour. So the road's kind of going up here. I think it's like 1 or 2%. The grade hasn't quite registered correctly, but if you can see it visually, it's up. But we got shelter from the south wind by these trees and all the little hedges you see there. So that helps you plan your route. You got to know what's out there. We do the same thing in the summer. You know, we like Springbranch Road because it's covered. Keep that sun off of you. We're doing 40 kilometers an hour because we got a tailwind here. The effort hasn't changed that much. I'm still near sweet spot because I'm pushing what little wind you generate from the speed. So I figure we might as well maximize this because we'll have to work when we get on Fishcreek. Fishcreek is exposed. There's no trees to protect you, just buildings. The wind is blustery because of the changes in temperature. It starts out cold, it gets hot. The fight. So I'm just on whatever gear I'm in. I'm just rolling it. And because the wind is still here, even though we got this push from the westerly flow, we're still getting a little bit of gusts from time to time from the south. So it's not a perfect tailwind situation where you feel like you're in a vacuum, but it's better than what we had out there in Montgomery. So I continue to tap out the rhythm. We're doing about 22, 23 miles an hour. It is not perfectly wind aided. You know, it's a blustery day. You can hear it, and so we'll take what we can get. That's all you got to do. I keep my cadence under 90 because the road has a bit of patina in this section here, and then with this effort now, the road's starting to go up. I downshift, increase my cadence because it's going to go up a little bit. I don't know if it'll register, but you can look at it visually. It looks like you're on this little tilt, but we're going up. All the way to that light, it's up. Yeah, now it says 1. It's like 2.5% at least. You can see Mark is working. He's getting his body into it. Mark moves all over his bike too much. He needs a fit. You shouldn't be doing all that movement. You should just be pedaling harder. You should already be where you need to be. He doesn't need major adjustments, but it's those little changes that makes the difference in your comfort and your efficiency. Yeah, 2%. That's about what it is. This is the FM 2854, also known as Keenan Road. Keenan is an area in northwest Montgomery County, Texas. We are headed towards Honea, Egypt Road. It will take us a little cutoff, a bypass called Leah Drive that will dump us onto Fishcreek Boulevard that closes out. We get a bit of a reprieve from the wind here, from the south wind. See the trees on the right? A bit of shelter. You still feel a bit, but the road goes up here again. Probably the same as the bump before, around 2%. You hear that noise? That's Mark's bike, and it's louder than that. I didn't think the camera was picking it up, but it's good to hear that. All the little creaks and cracks and all that. It's like, man, your bike should not be making any noise. You should be able to hear your tires. That's it. So he's had a history of noisy bikes, and he ends up being stranded very often and always calling for rides. Mark's trying to get himself back in shape. As I explained earlier, been busy with work, traveling, all of that, different issues. So he's riding solo. Like I had said earlier, you ride for a few weeks, get yourself good conditioning, and then you can hook up with groups and still test yourself and see how you're going. Most of my rides are solo. I do 1 group ride a week, maybe 2 at the most. But nowadays, actually, Paul and I are the only one riding together on Saturday for the most part. Schedule's a bit erratic. And as I explained earlier, the guys are playing with the start times. I've got a window to ride. I don't mess around. If a group meets my needs, then I'll hook up with them. Otherwise, we're the group, a group of 2. And if that's not the case for you, you're a group of 1. Just head out, get your rides in. You don't need a group. You need a good plan. You need to know how to train. That's what matters. Most of the top riders in the world for decades and time immemorial do their most difficult work alone. Because then you know how to work when you're off the front or you have a puncture and you got to chase back. So you got to do a lot of your training by yourself. You don't necessarily have to have a group. The group will push you, but you can also push yourself. We're approaching Honea, Egypt Road. I've signaled that we're going right. Mark passes on. You see, I pointed right, Mark pointed right. That's the way you do it in a group. Just point. You don't need to be riding through people's neighborhoods yelling. Point. It's more effective. And the guy behind you will point, and it just goes down the road like that as you ride with more people. So try to get the members of your group to behave like that. A lot of guys we ride with, we try to suggest that, but they don't listen. We just leave them alone. Mark's thanking me for pulling him on that highway. Basically, he said, thanks for the lift. This is Honea, Egypt Road. One of my other favorite roads. I think this is my favorite road in the area. So when I would stand like that, from time to time we hit tick, Then it will be quiet, then tick. Okay, that's enough to drive me nuts. So I'm like, okay, time to overhaul the bottom bracket. I've had the bike long enough, I know exactly what that means. The grease, usually every 90 days or so, with the kind of load I put on this thing, every 90 days I just re-lube. But when I checked it on the stand, it had a little bit of play. Nothing, maybe 1 or 2 millimeters. 2 human hairs. But that's enough for me to get it out of there. The bottom bracket, I mean, the bearings are cheap. Put a new one in there. I like it tight. I don't like any play on the pedals. Because then if you have play, then you have the wheel, the chain can pop because it's not quite lined up. Your drivetrain is not lined up correctly when you tune it. So no. A little bit of a bump here. We're approaching Leah. We're watching the cars and we're gonna wait till it's clear, and then but when we decide to turn, there will be a bunch of cars coming the opposite way. So these guys turn, I go ahead and wait and turn behind the car because he seemed to be accelerating and he didn't seem to see us from the opposite direction. We take the lane to discourage anyone else, but I don't think there's anybody back there. We're gonna turn left, and then I told him car up because the car in the distance there is accelerating. So I slowed down. Paul takes an early turn. That car, he was accelerating. He was coming out of that corner in that hill. So I waited for him. And I'm gonna ride and catch up with these guys. So I probably could have gone, but in my mind, my plan was to wait for him. Once I saw that he was accelerating, I was like, you know, because you don't want to change your plan midstream and jump in front of a car. I ain't late for nothing. At this point, I believe I'm already catching up. I just go ahead and increase the effort. If you look at my effort, I'm gonna just ride up to them. The road goes up here. This is Leah Drive. So I ride up to Mark's Wheel. This road connects to Fishcreek Boulevard. As I do this narration, we got our first rain, significant rain since August. So it has been an unusual year for our area. I don't think Paul and I have had one rainy ride this whole season, which is unusual, but you know, winter's coming. We'll probably get a few. So this little cutoff is lumpy. It's between 1% and 3%. I'm adjusting the tongue on that shoe. It keeps sliding in a position that is uncomfortable for my instep. I got it sorted. It's just the lacing was off. We're gonna be turning right. He says it's something about his legs feeling tender or something. His legs are hurting. That's what Paul's laughing at. So Mark says, if you guys pull away, don't wait. So I told him, I said, we're just gonna hold it steady. And he said, I'm not gonna argue with that.
Stay close, Mark.
Keep us steady, Mark. All right. No argument for me.
Yeah, I told him we're just gonna keep it steady. I mean, it's like it's no fun riding alone into the wind. Mark's trying to get himself back in shape, so we figure, okay, we'll just do our usual ride. That's how we ride. We don't, we're not trying to set any land speed records. So we're just gonna keep it steady, and all you gotta do is sit in. So I think Paul's gonna put him between us. There we go. That way we don't have to worry about where he is. This is at least 2%. This is a lump. It hasn't registered yet, but we're riding it. You can see how Mark is arching his back and that's a sign that everything's not where you want it to be. If you've got to arch your back and whatever when you go harder. So you got to use that as a gauge and get some professional help and get your bike dialed in so that you can spend more time riding comfortably. Because when I get home after these rides, I just put the bike up, wipe the chain, and get on with the rest of my day. Literally go to work, No issues with the ride. I start my recovery, take a recovery drink, clean up, and get something to eat within 2 hours. By the next day, I'm ready to go again. In a little bit, Mark is gonna, because I have my head down, I didn't see the yellow light. It popped up, he said yellow, and then we stopped. And he said, I thought you guys were gonna run after. And you would hear Paul tell him, we don't do that. We don't run lights. There's no point in increasing the inherent risk that is already in bicycle riding, basically, or even driving your car. That's like if you drove your car and didn't stop for any stop signs, you increase your chances of a crash exponentially. No point to that. That's not logical. As Mr. Spock would say, those of you Trekkies. He says yellow light.
I didn't know if we were going to bust through it out or not.
No, we don't play that.
Paul said we don't play that, though. We don't do that. I said we're already here.
No hurry to leave.
Yeah, this is the event. That's what he said. No hurry. I said we're already at the event. We're not late for anything. We're already where we want to be. I stay on the right. There are a bunch of cars behind us when we stop, just to let them go. And so Mark gets to the front. I don't want Mark pulling because I want him to hang into town with us. We're just about probably 8 kilometers from town. 5 miles, let's say. So I'll go ahead and roll back to the front. And we're going to sandwich Mark. So we're headed south. And you can see the graphic leaning above the avatar there, moving between southeast and south. This is mostly south. And so we're battling that wind now. And all I'm going to do is treat it like a mountain climb, keep the cadence in the 80s, put it in a good gear, and just work it. That's Mark's bike you're hearing. It's louder in person. It needs to be taken to the shop. Shouldn't be making out. Those sounds mean something out. With a carbon frame, it could be the bottom bracket shell and how it mates to the cups or whatever. If you have a push bottom brackets, set cartridge in there, then they need to use Loctite or whatever. It's just the surfaces are not mating well. It's a slight downhill, so the speeds go up. And all I did was shift up. I want to keep my rhythm the same because we got to fight this wind all the way into town. So we're doing about 22, 23 miles per hour into like a 15-kilometer headwind. So let's say 10 mile an hour headwind or something like that. It's blowing. The road goes up here. That's Mark's bike you're hearing. So I'm sure he'll get it sorted. We talked about it a little bit, and he said that he has 2 frames. One of them he's going to send to Huntsville. I'm not sure where in Huntsville. We have a bunch of frame builders in Huntsville. I don't know if he's sending it to Hans Schneider. There's a famous builder there, local to the area. He builds a lot of steel frames. And maybe he's going to send it there. One of his bikes, the derailleur hanger, the braze-on on the carbon bike broke off. And the guys whose shop he takes them to did not want to put a band-on it. A band-on derailleur versus a braze-on, because that would have solved the problem right away. And so he's sending that bike as a Cannondale. He's sending it to another guy. Maybe he's going to repair it and use a braze-on again. We had timed that light because I had backed off knowing that it was short. I like this road when we're coming back because for the most part, the drivers give us the right lane. And the line of sight is very good, as you can see. But when it's windy, you have very little shelter. Except if the wind is coming from like the east to our left or the west. Right now we're going directly into the south wind. So you just put your head down and you work. It's a good road to do time trial training on. I settled into a rhythm here. It's a flat road and that wind is just, listen to it. And it's not on my mind when we're riding. All I'm doing is listening to my legs. How does this effort feel? Do I like this rhythm? And so it feels like a long climb. That's why I'm holding this kind of a rhythm. So I pull off for a bit just to catch a breather. I think Paul will give me the camera here. Yeah. I'm going to get behind Paul at this point. So Mark will be the third rider. He will get more of a draft because he will get a little bit of Paul, a little bit of me pushing the wind out of the way. Makes a difference where you're positioned for the most part. The more riders in front of you in a bigger group, you kind of coast along. So. So Paul is in a gear that he's rolling. He's getting himself settled on the tops there. This is how we ride. We call it Veloharmony riding. We got a light that's red. It's a short light. We're trying to time it. I think it changes to green. Good. And Paul goes ahead and raises the pace. I don't want him sitting up there too long because we got that hill in the distance and we're going into this wind. So as soon as we get a wider shoulder, I will roll to the front. Right there. So we can exchange the camera. So now I get to the front. My goal is to keep it the same effort Paul was doing. Keep it steady. so he can catch his breath before we get to that climb. So I sit up high to give Mark a big buffer, a big draft. The road here is a great, right here. Is at least 1%. You can feel it more than anything that you see. That's why you saw Mark lower his body and get into the drops, because you got to work a little harder. I'm already in the gear I need, and the rhythm feels good, so I'm not shifting or anything at this point. I'm on the big chain ring. You see, now it says 1%. This is a slight grade. Then once it will dip a little bit, and then we will hit that climb. Once we approach that climb, I will stay and go to the small chain ring, so I'm already in a low ratio, and find the gear I need to get over that bump. I don't like to have my drivetrain even close to cross chaining when I'm climbing. I want that chain as straight as possible. But by keeping it steady here, Mark gets to catch his breath, Paul gets to catch his breath before we begin another effort. I think somewhere here I drop it to the small chain ring if I haven't already done so. Yeah, so I've got to be in the small chain ring now. I want to keep that thing in. So I'm probably going to climb it with a 3916 or 3917, something like a 65-inch gear thereabouts. You can see Mark is working. My rhythm is the same. I'm in whatever gear will keep the rhythm the same. That's what I meant when I told him we're going to keep it steady. So he's working really hard to stay on the wheel. So now the hill is over, but this road continues to be a drag. It will stay between 1 to 2.5%. And then with the wind, so I'd stay in the small gear. So my heart rate went up to like 170 because of that effort and the wind, that bump. I don't pay particular attention to it because I'm in the gear that I want to be in. I'm taking a spin. It will come back down because now that the terrain has changed. But you can see we're still fighting a slight grade. I'm on the tops so I can breathe, open up my chest, and then I sit up high so Mark can get a bit of a draft. This allows him to catch his breath. There's a lot of gravel on the road from this driveway. They need to scrape that up. The rain washes that. It's always there. We know it's there. Once it gets clean, I will get back on the shoulder. So by keeping the effort steady, we're able to keep everybody together. And this is how Paul and I normally ride. We didn't change anything we normally do because Mark joined us. We kept it the same. We call it Veloharmony riding. That's the style of riding we do. We're building aerobic endurance. So remember, get your K's in and keep the doctors far.